Three, two, one. Welcome to Jim's Take. We're going to go positive this week, episode 151. We're going to talk about pride, but in a good way. What are you proud of? We're so focused on all the things we don't have. We're so focused on all the things we won't have. We're so focused on all these external changes that are going to be going on, and I think it's time for a little bit of positivity. I know I could use it. I think you could use it. Not the stupid positivity like go team go and you're going to be wonderful and all that. We'll call that toxic positivity. The fake Instagram reality kind of nonsense, the cheesy gratitude thing. I think I want to talk about, well, I don't think I know. I want to talk about pride and how you can be proud of the things you've done and how it's an actual asset to moving forward and responding to change. You've already done the hard part is kind of what I'm thinking about calling this podcast episode. Who knows what I am going to call it, but I think pride is the point. I think we do things so that we could tell people about it, so we could be proud of what we accomplished. And so often we're told that we're not supposed to be proud. We're not supposed to be seen as arrogant. We're not supposed to be seen as that. And I'm not talking about this superiority complex that we might get because of being proud of something we've done, but just it gives you some kind of validity that you're capable and that you're worthwhile, and we should be proud of the things that we do. And I think it's time that we reclaim it. And so I'm going to give you a couple of things that I use to kind of remind myself why I do what I do. But I think we need to build this kind of a personal proof of capability. Maybe we'll call it that. We need a personal proof that we are capable, because when bad things happen or when massive change comes, when you get laid off, when you get whatever problem comes, you need that anchor to remind you that you have something useful to provide and that you provide some use to people and value to people. And I think some people forget that. I think some people forget that they are valuable and valued. And when things get turned upside down on its head, if we don't have that anchor, then bad things happen. And that's one component to think of. The other one, too, though, is, we should be proud of what we accomplish. We have to take ownership of what we accomplish, because if you don't promote and stick up for yourself, nobody else will. And if you don't take credit for the work that you do, somebody else will. And most people don't pay attention anymore because we're too focused on ourselves. And they're too focused on themselves. And they're too worried about what's coming around the bend for them. And so nobody's thinking about you. And so we have to remind them that we exist. And this is true if you're in corporate. It's true if you're a stay-at-home parent. People have to be reminded that you're relevant. And you have to share that you have this relevance to yourself and everything else. And so... So let's break it down. Let's get into stuff. The first obvious point to bring is that we generally are told not to talk about our accomplishments, and we're culturally wired for, I guess. I mean, I was told growing up, this importance of humility, and I think humility is misinterpreted in so many different ways. Right? The amount of clients I talk to say, I didn't want to take credit for that because I wanted to be seen as humble. I didn't want to be seen as not humble. All this stuff, this fear, this perception of what other people are going to think. But when people tell you to be humble, what they're really telling you is don't be an arrogant ass. That doesn't mean don't take credit for your work or be proud of something that you set out to accomplish and you did. Right? And I think this battle of humility in quotation marks, is it really prevents us from taking the risk and the emotional risk and the challenges that we want to be proud of and take these adventures to say, can I do something? And everything from the Ironman to writing a book to doing a podcast to, I don't know, go do stand-up comedy one weekend, whatever it is, as long as you try it. And then you can be proud of it, about the adventure, and tell the story. My daughter's away at camp. And I asked her, I said, I hope you come back with stories. Like, what did you try? And I want to hear all the things that you were very, I want you to tell me every story that you've done and every cool thing that you did. And I think humility has become this deferral mechanism, right? The real definition of humility, it's more of a religious thing where you're supposed to defer to something bigger than you. I think it's unhealthy. right? Because we put it into so many other things, and it's this external push to keep you in your place. And I disagree with it so much. Now, I mean, the arrogance of look how phenomenal I am, that's different, right? That's arrogance. It's not being proud of what you've accomplished. Those are two very separate things, and there's nuance in this. But we're also kind of this hustle culture we have now is we're pushed for this forward motion all the time. Like, don't look back, only look forward, and the past is in the past and all that. But the past reminds us of the things that we're capable of so that we can do the things in the future. And I would say don't live in the past, but at least remember the great things that you did, right? Because I would argue one of the greatest motivators, at least for me, is accomplishment. Right? Oh, I did this once. Let me see what I could do next time. Right? Oh, I did a half marathon. Maybe I could run a marathon. I did this. Maybe I could do that. And, this push of humility and this push for a hustle culture. So you have to do a bunch, but you can't tell people about it, and don't be arrogant. And these are all external kind of constrictions that we put on ourselves that we also interpret in a really negative way that prevents us from just, being freaking proud of what it is that we do. And it's hard to be proud of what you do when you don't do anything meaningful. And I wasn't necessarily proud of the work I did in corporate, even though I did good work. But I remember when I was looking for jobs when I was in corporate, I was bored of my work and just looking for jobs while I was sitting there. I should have been doing work, but I was looking for other jobs. I remember one of my things that I was looking for is like, what can I be happy and proud to tell people that I do? Right? And working in finance isn't cool, isn't fun, isn't something that I can necessarily be proud of. I realize now the lessons I did, and I did some pretty cool work, and I've learned how to interpret that into something cool. But I think that was something I always wanted, where I wanted to be able to tell people that I was doing something fantastic. And I think that's such a big motivator for people that, get over that hump where we could just tell people that we did something fantastic. And so when we're looking for this external validation, the humility thing prevents us from doing it. And we've got external validation versus this internal recognition that we did something we didn't think we could and that we can be proud of. And so what happens to us versus what we made happen, right? What are we so proud of that we made happen versus just sitting there observing and saying this happened to us. Right. And if you were to take a look now at what's going on with AI and everything else, it's been out for like 2 freaking years now where we've been talking about it ad nauseum. Are you going to be at this point where you're saying, look what happened to me because of AI, or look at how proud I am because I adapted to AI or whatever it is and I built something amazing and I was able to adjust and do all this stuff. And, we admire the people who have these stories. So why can't you have that story? And you'd be surprised at how many stories you already have, right? Pride is the point you've already done the hard work. And so what I always like to tell people, I just hit the table. What I like to tell people is this idea of the Posdoc. I call it the Posdoc because I have no better term for it. When I was launching my business and you get the self-doubt, and maybe this is for imposter syndrome, maybe it's for whatever, I started this checklist of things that I was really proud of. And I don't share it with anybody. It's just for me. But it's got adventure things that I did that I didn't think I could do, like the Ironman, skydiving, like whatever, right? I did that stuff. I'm proud of it, and it's great. Wrote a book, TED Talk, add it to the thing. And that's a nice reminder that I'm capable of doing things, right? And I always need to, so then I can look at all those and say, all right, well, what's next, right? But the other thing I put in that's really meaningful to me is the quotes from people who gave me compliments. And those make me incredibly proud too. And you get emotional reading some of them. Like some of them are really nice compliments. And then other ones are just like work compliments. Like the president of the business that I used to work for once said in a meeting, and it was a side comment, just give it to Frawley, we know it'll get done right. And that goes in the Posdoc, right? Because that made me feel good. And the nice thing about it, and I remember my favorite one on there is my first one, is when I launched my business, I was traveling to, I think it was Switzerland for one of my first clients. And I go into the lounge and the woman there is like, "Are you a writer?" And I said, "No, I'm not a writer. I wasn't at the time." And she goes, "Oh, well, whatever you do, you're walking your purpose." And I was on cloud nine. I don't know who she is in Newark Airport 10 years ago, whatever, 12 years ago, however long it was. But that's on the Posdoc. Like it made me feel so good that I made the right choice of leaving corporate and going out on my own. And she knew nothing about me. But you get these compliments from time to time. And the great thing about it, from friends, from coworkers, from random ladies who work at the lounge in Newark Airport, when you read them, they bring you back psychologically to that moment. Like you actually feel it inside, like parasympathetically, you feel it inside your body. So it's actually a stress release too, where you're like, "Oh yeah, I remember that, and that's good," and it brings you out of any potential funk that you have. But then also it challenges you and gets you excited for what's next. And so you can call it a Posdoc, you could call it like an intentional personal highlight reel, but just like this soul warming level record of moments that matter to you. And when you look at how many you have, maybe it's loaded with stuff with your kids, maybe it's loaded with stuff with your friends, maybe it's siblings, parents, whatever it is, it becomes a map. It becomes a map of not just what you're proud of and what you're done, but it leads to directly to where should you go next? What vehicle are you taking to get there? What do you see across all of these that are really relevant? When you feel lost, you say, "Oh, okay, these are motivations, these are values, these are whatever." And when you become lost, it just becomes your compass. It becomes this incredibly powerful, like, I did this, I am this. This is part of who I am. I'm not a person who just got laid off. I'm not a person who didn't get that client. I'm not a person who didn't get invited to the party. I'm this person. And this document should live. And I look at my Posdoc quite a bit. I mean, at least once a week, if not more. I review it before I go to a networking event. I review it for all these things. And this pride then, when we get excited about pride, about what we did, and cool stories that we've done, and we get excited, and then people are attracted to our excitement, and we're like, yeah, it would be so cool. I'll go skydiving again in a heartbeat. And, you've got all this stuff. It becomes fuel. It's not about ego. It's about fuel. And it builds this self-evidence to yourself, this efficacy that you know the steps to get to wherever it is that you want to do because you've done all these other things. So why can't you do that? Right? And we're entering this very quickly. I know we're talking about it. It's around the bend with AI and everything else. We're entering this mode of figure it out. Right? I think that's, and I said this, my nephew was up in Manhattan. He had never really spent time in Manhattan. We were just hanging out for the weekend, and it was great to see him, and he's going off to college and everything. But I said, if I just ran away from you right now, around like 23rd Street, I said, if I just ran away from you right now, what would you do? And he's like, I have no idea. I said, all right, next time you come up, we're going to play the game called Figure It Out. And I think that's the skill set that people need to do, is they need to figure it out, but they have to recognize that they can figure it out. And I think that's what something like a Posdoc and being proud and recognizing all of the things that you've done up to this point is so impactful, that you could find these things to inform your path about what's next. And when you remind yourself of your power, of these amazing things that you've done, and everyone has done amazing, incredible things. Now, they may not seem amazing to you initially, but if you start telling people about some of the things you've done, they're just floored. Like, I think about what my brothers and sisters have done. Like, they've just done so much cool shit. My brothers-in-law and my sisters-in-law, like, I've got a sister-in-law who makes fake eyeballs. It's amazing. I've got a sister-in-law who makes fake eyeballs. Like, that's like the coolest thing ever. She wouldn't necessarily think it's cool. That's her work. She makes fake eyeballs. But like, I think that's incredible, right? Put it in the doc. But there are so many really cool things that you've done that other people would kill to do, or kill to be able to do, right? A lot of the things that just come so naturally to us, we just don't think about as like a superpower. But other people look at it and they're so incredibly jealous. And when we can identify what those things are, we can lean into them a little bit more, and we can use that to fuel our relationships with other people, to help other people, to be part of something, to talk about our skill set at work and position ourselves differently, and build a business maybe, or do whatever, but at least recognize our value. And we don't necessarily do a good job of recognizing our own value. I'm terrible at it. I'm absolutely terrible at it, and that's why I needed the Posdoc. This reminder that we're useful and that we can bring value to other people. So much of the AI talk is about, oh, will you have a job and can you bring value at work? But we're still fundamentally human beings. And we have to bring value to the human beings around us. That's an intrinsic motivator for everybody. And, if we find these common things and we start to give ourselves credit, more credit than what we've given ourselves credit for, right? And again, not arrogantly, but just give yourself credit. You've done more than what you give yourself credit for. So start acting like it. And I think when you recognize your brilliance, you recognize your excellence, and you may realize that the path you're on and you're grabbing for money or titles or anything, it has nothing to do with, your value. And then suddenly you're like, you know what, I just don't care about that. I care about this, or I care about that, or this is where I should be going. And it's a good kind of self-exploratory exercise based on what you've already done and where you're going to go next. So be proud. Be very proud about who you are and what you do and all the awesome stuff you've done. I mean, if you were to take just 5 minutes, maybe we'll play with the number 5. Take 5 minutes and think about the coolest things you've ever done, or write down the 5 coolest things you've done, and just start that Posdoc, or just sit on the couch and quiet and just think about the compliments you've received. You've received them and you've gotten them, and sometimes we have to look a little bit deeper. But once you start the list, they just randomly pop in. You're like, oh, I got to add that to the list. Oh, I remember that. You got to add that to the list. So start that this week, and it's a nice reminder it's nice to have it when you need it. I'll say that. And it's just a fun exercise. You're sitting on a plane, just start writing it out. It's good stuff. Have a wonderful week. Next week, I don't know what the topic is. Next week, we're going to figure it out. Wish me luck. I'm going to try and do an Ironman this weekend. I'm very ill prepared, and I have no idea how that's going to shake out. It's going to hurt. I'm too old for this. But I'll see you next week, hopefully, provided I don't die in the Ironman. I love you all. Have a wonderful week. I'll talk to you soon.